Hey guys, Pete here. Today we're going to do the recap and review for Twin Peaks Season 3, Episode 7. This is your spoiler warning. There will be plenty of spoilers past this point. And it was an action-packed episode, so I'm going to try to streamline the scene by scene a little bit this time. But don't forget, there will be a timestamp link in the bottom in the description, so you can skip right over that if you want. Alright, so we start off with Jerry Horn, and he's in the woods. He appears to be lost, he looks scared, and he calls his brother Ben and tells him his car's been stolen. He doesn't know where he's at, and he thinks he's high. Now, I don't want to go on about this for too long because it is a short little scene, but it's interesting that he's in the woods, right? Because a lot of weird stuff has happened in the woods outside of Twin Peaks, so it's curious as to what he's doing there at this time. Could be important. But also, it kind of reflects, he's kind of like Dougie Coop right now in a way. So that's another thing. I mean, it is the opening scene, so it's kind of important, I think, but we don't know why yet, so I won't ramble on about it. Next, we get a big payoff. We get a lot of information about a lot of stuff we've been thinking about for a long time. The pages from the bathroom stall door were from Laura Palmer's secret diary. It was a retelling of the dream she had with Annie. When Annie told her to write it down, she did. It's that Goodale's in the lodge and he can't leave. So I mentioned this in the Top Moments video, but it's really crucial here that Hawk got this stuff, that he found this stuff, because he doesn't discredit it right away. He doesn't discredit the supernatural aspect. I mean, he's been to the entrance of the lodge twice now, which we really should talk about the last time he was there, but I don't have time in this video. But anyways, there's 3 pages from the diary. We find out there's one more that's missing. We read one side of 2 of them, so there's more info there that we haven't really got into yet. But Hawk does a really good job of telling Frank Truman, who wasn't around, what was going on, and tells him that Doc Hayward, Cooper, after he left, but that he doesn't know if anybody else did. Now, they don't mention Major Briggs here, and I don't know if that's on purpose or what. I mean, maybe it's already... Bobby told them that Cooper went to see his father, so maybe it's just implied that they already know that. I don't know if that's important or not. I mean, they should know that. He definitely did see Cooper before Cooper left town, but they don't mention him. Another thing is that they realize that Leland probably put the pages in the stall door. Since the one page that they read refers to him, Hawk takes that to be true, and he says he must have put them there whenever he was in for questioning in the Jacques Renault murder. Frank does say that he's going to call Harry S. Truman, and get him up to speed and see what he thinks. And we leave this scene with the idea that a lot of stuff is now out in the open. Next, we see Frank Truman call his brother Harry. It's a one-way conversation in that we can hear what Frank's saying, but not what Harry's saying. But it basically boils down to he's not doing well, he needs to get rest. Frank tells him he was going to talk to him about some stuff, but he decides not to. So we don't get any input from Harry S. at all about what Frank just learned. We do get a touching moment between the brothers, though, whenever Frank says, "Harry, beat this thing." Next, we run into Deputy Andy, who's investigating the hit and run. He arrives at the guy's house who owns the truck, and we find out right away it's not Richard Horn. I believe this is Bill, who we'll talk about later, but it's kind of just a guess. I might just be making that up. Anyways, he tells Andy that he wasn't driving. Andy asks and says he needs to know who it is that was driving, and they make an agreement to meet at another location in a couple hours. He tells them a specific place to meet, and we find out it's at 4:30, which could be of note because that's what the Giant said to Cooper in the very beginning. It's a little bit odd here that Andy just leaves and doesn't press the issue while he's there. There might be something going on we don't know about, that they might know each other. But one of the things that seems pretty important at the end is as Andy's walking back to his car, we see another car pass on the road. So at least someone saw that the police were at Bill's house, or whatever this guy's name is. Back at the sheriff's office, Frank calls Doc Hayward. He calls him on the phone and asks him if he knows about Skype. Doc Hayward says he uses it all the time, gives him his handle, and they have a conversation which was one of, if not the biggest moments of this entire episode. Frank asks him about Agent Cooper. He says he remembers that Dale was acting weird. He took him to the hospital to check him out while he was doing his rounds. An hour later, he saw him leaving the ICU fully dressed. The doctor yelled out for him, but he didn't say anything, he just walked away. When Frank asked why he might have been in the ICU, Doc Hayward says that he figured he was looking in on Audrey, who had just, was in a coma after what happened at the bank. Like, I already babbled on about this in the other video, but it's just really good. I just watched it again, and the whole Doc Hayward part just gives me chills. I'll talk a little bit more about what Cooper might have been doing in the ICU after we finish the scene by scene. In Buckhorn, South Dakota, Lieutenant Knox has arrived to check out the prints from Major Briggs. She's surprised to learn that it's not just prints from a crime scene, but it's actually prints on a body that they have in their morgue. She checks it out and realizes there's no head and that the body is of a man in his late 40s who died within the last 5 or 6 days. She goes and calls Colonel Davis right away and explains the situation, but is pretty confident that it is actually Briggs' body, but can't explain the head or the age. Colonel Davis said he's going to make another call, that other call, which I assume is the FBI since he said that before. And while they're talking, the man who I believe is the same guy that we saw in the jail cell when Bill Hastings was there starts to walk down the hall, and it's really not clear to me if she sees him or not. Like, we hear the electrical noise and we see him walking up. She looks that way and it looks like she sees him, but then she takes off right away because she's in the middle of something important. So I don't know. I mean, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that you see and then not take a double take or something. So I don't know if she saw him or not. But she goes back in and tells the police that they should not let anybody else see the body and that she thinks the case will no longer be theirs, as in the FBI will be coming in. We see the guy in black covered with black walk by again. We hear the electrical noise, and there are some people out there who think this is a different guy who's covered in oil or soot, but I'm still in the camp of it being the same person. I just think he looks a little bit different walking around. Other people think that it's a totally different character altogether. We get a quirky scene of Gordon whistling in his office. I read somewhere it's Ramstein that he's whistling. I don't really know. We see a corn on the cob on his wall in the beginning of the scene. And then we also see the giant mushroom cloud behind him. Albert comes in. He tells them things didn't go well with Diane. Basically that she said, no fucking way. They have a good back and forth, and then once Gordon says please, Albert agrees to accompany him to go back and see her again. They head over to Diane's apartment, where we see she's entertaining a younger man. I read that was Don Johnson's son, but I didn't verify it. But she's still not happy to see them at all. They tell her that Cooper is in federal prison, and she says good. Then eventually she comes around. Gordon is awesome in this scene, and Diane is, Laura Dern as Diane is just fantastic. I'll talk more about that later. But he basically says, this may require a change of attitude on your part. So she listens, and they tell her that they think something's wrong. They don't know what it is, but they need someone else to talk to Cooper who knows him well, and then tell them what she thinks. Ultimately, she agrees. We get straight on the plane to South Dakota, and we notice that Diane not only drinks, but she seems to drink around the clock and smoke cigarettes in every one of her scenes, even on the plane. She's still not on board. She's sort of sitting on her own, and in the back we see Gordon and Albert talking, and Tammy comes over to show them the prints. We see what she had discovered earlier, and that Albert confirms that someone switched the prints and they had to flip it over to make it match. So yeah, the prints aren't from actually Evil Coop, at least not that one. So there's been some doctoring that's happened there. When Tammy asks about that, Gordon gives a really cool demonstration where he shows her that the left ring finger is the spiritual mound, or the spiritual finger, and that's the one that was messed up. He doesn't give us any more info, he just tells her to think about that. And then we see a picture of Evil Coop in what is supposed to be in Brazil. This has been mentioned that this is Al Capone's house outside of Miami, but that's really not important to the story, just an interesting fact. And as they're talking, you can see that Diane is really thinking about something. We don't know what it is at this point, but she has real reservations of meeting with Cooper again. After getting reassurance that she'll be in control and that she won't have to stay longer than she wants to, and a quick fuck you to Tammy, which was in the Top Moments video and was classic, Diane goes in and talks to Evil Coop. It's the same setup that we saw earlier whenever they, behind the screen in the glass room. She asks when the last time they saw each other was. Evil Coop, I should say, basically says that he thinks Diane's upset with him. She presses the issue, and eventually he said the last time they saw each other was at her house. And we get the idea that something bad happened, that it was probably after Evil Coop left the lodge and then left Twin Peaks, and it was traumatic at the very least for Diane. She says, "Who are you?" and then she leaves. On the way out, Gordon makes a quick stop to say to the warden, thanks for everything, and make sure that he tells the warden to hold him until they hear from him. Outside, Diane is a wreck. She's really upset. She has a heart-to-heart with Gordon, saying that it was not anything about his physical appearance or the time that's passed, but there was something missing in this guy, something in his heart, and it was not the Dale Cooper that she knew. Gordon says he understands, and that's good enough for him, and also asks about the last night that they spent together, and she says that they will have a talk. Then she has a drink, and like I said, she's a mess. It's been a bad thing, whatever happened. We can definitely speculate, but we don't know for sure. As they're escorting him back to his cell, Evil Coop tells the CO that he needs to talk to the warden in his office and to tell him that it's about a strawberry. Back in Twin Peaks, we get a shot of the mountains, and we hear the music, the ominous music in the background a little bit. We see that Andy's waiting to meet the truck owner, who hasn't shown. We see a quick shot of his house, the door is open, and we hear a little bit of the electrical noise in the background. And then we cut back to Andy, who checks his Rolex, which is kind of weird, but I won't get into that here. And we see that he's, a good half an hour and 5 minutes late, so that Andy gives up and he takes off. Back in the warden's office, Evil Coop is brought in and shackled to the chair. The warden thinks he has the upper hand at first, tells him that the cameras are off and they can speak freely, but it totally gets turned around, and I'm not going to even pretend I understand what they're talking about here, but he brings up the dog leg, says there's 3 more of those, and that they went out with the information that he's thinking about to people that he doesn't want coming around if they find out something happens to him. So he has his back against the wall, but I don't know what all that means. Either way, Coop tells him he wants a car, he wants a gun, or he says a friend in the glove box, I assume that's a gun, and Ray Monroe, which is Ray, and that they want to leave at 1 o'clock tonight, smooth and easy, and the warden has no choice but to let him go. Back at Dougie's office, we see that Jane E.E. is outside waiting, and that inside, Dougie Coop has not stopped drawing. He's drawing something that doesn't fit on the page anymore at this point. He's sort of scratching it into the thing on his desk. Tony is there. He's asking why Dougie Coop is not talking to him, and he wants to know what he went into Bushnell's office with. And at the same time, the secretary comes to tell him that there are police there, and in parroting her, he has her bring them in. Outside, Janie got fed up, and so she marches her way inside, and I say march because that's what she does. 3 detectives come in Dougie's office, as does Janie E.E. at the same time, and Bushnell Mullins as well. We find out that they found the car, that there were 3 fatalities. Janie E. is awesome as usual in kind of controlling the conversation, and yeah, I mean, this is kind of the opposite of all the other Dougie scenes so far. We find out a bunch of stuff in a short period of time, and since these other people are there, his lack of anything isn't really that big of an issue. The police now think that the car was stolen by these guys, and then it blew up, so it kind of gets them off the hook at least a little bit. And we find out they want him to come in and answer some questions, and that Bushnell also has some questions about those files, but everyone's content and waiting till tomorrow. On the way downstairs, Janie E. gives him a rundown of what happened with the Payoff, and then we see Ike the Spike coming through the crowd with a gun pointed straight at Dougie Coop. He reacts right away as an instinctual Coop, like Super Dougie Coop, or whatever you want to say here. Grabs the gun, grabs his hands. Janie E.E. starts to attack him from behind. Ike the Spike is no match for them. But then we see an image of the arm show up in front of Dougie Coop, and he tells him to squeeze his hand off. So Dougie Coop continues to squeeze until we see that there's a big piece of flesh from his palm left behind on the gun. Ike the Spike wiggles free and escapes, but of course the police show up, news crews, and it's a big deal. You see the newscasters interviewing a few of the people who were witnesses. They're singing Dougie Jones's praises, even though they're talking about Dougie Coop. And the little girl says he smelled funny, which is something that might be of note. But, my favorite part was the woman saying that that Dougie moved like a cobra, and Janie E's explanation to the police. Now, it makes you wonder if they interviewed Dougie Coop or if they would at least show his picture on the news. This could be important later as well, but we don't find that out for sure. We do see the police bagging the big piece of flesh off of Ike the Spike's hand, though. We get a sort of drawn out scene where Ben is in his office after hours with Beverly, the assistant that we met way back in part 1. When I first watched, I didn't know if there was actually a sound or if Beverly was crazy, but when you watch, it's almost like music, but on second watch, I realized that they can actually hear what we hear. So there is a hum, but we're really not sure what it is. It's not clear even by the end. While they're moving from side to side, Beverly finds the key and gives it to Ben. He realizes that it's old because they've had cards for 20 years and that it is from the room of Agent Cooper where he was shot. We figure out that Beverly isn't from Twin Peaks because she has no idea who Laura Palmer is. He tells her it's a very long story, and we see that there's some sexual tension in between them. Eventually he breaks it off, and then we see this crazy pan at the end where the camera goes into the wood paneling. I mentioned this in the top moments video, and it could be related to the sound or it could be related to Josie. I'm leaning more towards the sound, but let me know what you guys think about that. Back at her house, we can see that Beverly's husband Tom is quite sick. I'm not an expert in these things, but since he has no hair, I think he probably has cancer. It's a heated exchange. He is suspicious of why she wasn't there. She's upset because she has to go back to work. And I don't really know how this ties into anything else at this point. We don't know who Tom is as far as I can think of. And yeah, I have a feeling it's going to be important later, but I don't know what to take away from this except for this is her situation at home. Then we get a really long and memorable scene of Jean-Michel Renaud behind the bar while someone is sweeping. This is at the Roadhouse, of course. For about 2+ minutes, we see the guy sweeping and we listen to Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs. And despite the fact that I really enjoy that song, I'll tell you why I like this scene. It's certainly out of place in a fast-moving episode, but what I like about it is that, we're sitting there and the whole time I'm on the edge of my seat watching someone sweep. It's just I'm trained to think that something must be going to happen, and so it's interesting because nothing really ever does until the phone rings. I know a lot of people complained about this, but I think it's kind of great in the way that it is presented. Of course, if there were too many of these things, it would get old, but in this one instance, I'm kind of digging it. When the phone rings, we learn a couple things. We learn that Jean-Michel is into some things like Jacques was. Find out that he sent 2 girls, straight A students, which he says are whores, straight A whores, to someone that they were 15 and that guy owes him for 2. We also find out that the Renauds have owned the Roadhouse for 57 years and that this has nothing to do with the Roadhouse. So I'm not 100% sure what to make out of this, but I'd be glad to hear what you guys think in the comments. Is this just a callback to what Jock used to do with Laura, or is this something that we need to keep an eye on? At the prison, Ray and Evil Coop are released without any incident as the warden looks on. All we know is that he gets his rental car, he tells Ray to drive, and he gets his phone back. But he's on the loose, and we go back to Twin Peaks where we get some shots of the woods with some strange sounds. Doesn't really tie anything together, but it's definitely eerie. And then we get a shot of the inside of the Double R. It looks like a normal night in there. Shelley's behind the counter serving coffee. Heidi's off to the left. We see Norma working at her booth. And then we see a guy run up, come inside. He yells, "Has anybody seen Bill?" No one answers and he leaves. Then we get some music and the end credits roll. Now there's a lot going on in this little scene, and I will touch on that a little bit here and then a little bit more in the 10 Things You Might Have Missed video that'll follow right after that. But for now, we're going to wrap this up and get into the discussion. Alright, this was a great episode. If you skipped through the scene by scene, then welcome to the video. There's so much to talk about here, it almost doesn't seem right to have this after the scene by scene, but I'm going to do my best to talk about some different things here. First off, the big bombshell is Laura's diary pages. There's a little bit of continuity error stuff going on, but I'm just going to look at it for what it is right now. It's big that people are aware that something happened to Dale after he returned from the lodge. How this is going to play going forward is pretty up in the air. I mean, there's several things happening all at the same time that might bring the real Cooper onto the radar. The key has arrived. Because the sound thing and the sexual tension and everything else was going on in that extended scene with Beverly and Ben, he didn't really get into it. But it would be hard to believe that he doesn't go back to that idea that key came. Also, because of the incident with Ike the Spike, there's a distinct possibility that Dougie Jones may end up on television, and that could lead somewhere as well. As far as the pages, the most important thing, I think, is that they know that there's something going on with Cooper after he left, but also, I mean, it's good to know that Leland, the whole thing kind of makes sense to everyone. Now, the other pages we didn't see. Is there important stuff? I don't know, but I do think that there's definitely something important with the one page that isn't there. I have no idea where that's at, but I mean, it was pretty specific how they explained that 4 pages were unaccounted for and that this was only 3. So those would be the only 3 that Leland had on him when he went to the police station. Of course, the Diane stuff was amazing. There's a definite implication that something happened between her and Cooper before he went into hiding, and that would definitely be the evil Cooper based on what we've seen. And I think, I don't know what everyone else thinks about Diane because I haven't read a lot about things this week, but this is not how I expected Diane. I expected her to be the female version of Cooper, and at this point, she's pretty much the opposite. So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts were, if this is how you envisioned her or not. I mean, I got the idea that they had a deep connection through work because she kind of got Cooper because she was the same sort of way. Now, is she like how she is, like drunk all the time because of what happened with her and Evil Cooper? I don't know for sure, but I think there's an implication that might be the case. The Jerry Horn thing, I think it's important that we remember that he was in the woods. That could be important. I don't know if it is, but everyone who's disappeared has disappeared in the woods near Twin Peaks, and he's just out there lurking around in there as far as we can tell. The warden thing is a little bit confusing. Like I said, when I talked about that scene, I was definitely not expecting him to say the dog leg or that dog has 4 legs and on and on. I mean, it was hilarious, but what the hell is he talking about? Who is Mr. Strawberry, and why would he send 3 dog legs to different people so the information got out as an insurance plan? I don't get it, but it's great. I like that I don't get it. The Andy thing, it seems a little odd that he let that guy go and set the plan to see him later. Obviously, hearing the electrical noises outside the house while he's waiting gives us a pretty good idea that guy's not around anymore. Is that Bill? I don't know for sure. I say I don't know because there is nobody named Bill in the credits. There's a guy who's marked Farmer that could be this guy, but it's just not clear. I mentioned at the end, the guy who comes in, there was confusion because in the subtitles it said that it was him saying, "Has anybody seen Bing?" According to the show's executive producer, that was a mistake. That is actually Bing who came, who's played by David Lynch's son Riley, and he was looking for Bill. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff there. When you look at the shots, they aren't the same people whenever it cuts back from Norma. Heidi's in a different place. Why would there be a time jump right there? Why did they show the woods right before that? I mean, there's a lot to speculate there, and I want to hear what you guys have to say about that for sure. The thing with Doc Hayward and the mention of Cooper going to the ICU, there is one other possibility. I mean, a lot of people are thinking that it means that this theory that Evil Coop impregnated Audrey while she was in her coma is obviously true. But there is another thing. As we know, Annie was in the hospital. In the missing pieces, we saw that the nurse took the ring from her. But Evil Coop could have been looking for that as well. He could have taken it from Annie. He could have taken it from the nurse. If if we're supposed to accept that the missing pieces thing is canon. So yeah, it's not a confirmation about the Audrey thing. It could be a red herring, or it could be something we need to learn more about. So yeah, this video is getting super long already, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up. But I think that one of the big things here, the sort of a revelation of the fast-moving episode with a lot of stuff coming to light that we had been speculating about, is that this is starting to make sense a little bit to me. I'm not gonna say that I understand Frost and Lynch's whole strategy or anything like that. I'm not that arrogant. But in a sense, it's starting to make more sense in the whole idea of it being an 18-hour movie. What was confusing about this in the beginning is that, yeah, it's long and it's a movie, but Cooper wasn't making a lot of progress, and that was frustrating a lot of people. What I'm starting to understand a little bit better now is that it's a bunch of stories, and they move at different paces. This isn't necessarily the story of Agent Cooper alone. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, yes, it is about his journey back to his old self, but in the way that they're setting things up, different parts of the story move at different speeds, and different episodes address different things. So I'm still pretty much on board. I still pretty much like everything. I liked how we got a lot of payoffs here, and I think that it's going to continue to move in that direction. A lot of stuff is happening, and it's taking a lot of episodes to show us, but not that much time has passed in the reality of the show's time frame. So I'm interested. I want to know what you guys think. Obviously, I'll be doing a Q&A, a 10 things that you might have missed video. I have a couple of theory videos I've been wanting to do, and I'm going to try to squeeze them in there. So please like the video. Please check back soon. Subscribe to my channel so you won't miss any of the Twin Peaks videos. Any questions you have, put them in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you want to know about. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.